Hi friends. Today we are going to be reading the script of the musical that my high school is doing. This year we are performing Into the Woods, and I am playing the narrator. So we're pretty much going to be reading through the first bits of Act 1 just a couple times so that I can start to memorize it. So let's get started. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, lived a young maiden, a sad young lad, a childless baker with his wife. The poor girl's mother had died, and her father had taken for his new wife a woman with 2 daughters of her own. All 3 were beautiful of face, but vile and black of heart. Jack, on the other hand, had no father, and his mother, well, she was not quite beautiful. Cinderella's stepmother had a surprise for her. Because the baker had lost his mother and father in a baking accident, well, that's at least what he believed, he was eager to have a family of his own, and was concerned that all efforts until now had failed. The old enchantress went on to tell the couple that she had placed a spell on their house. But the witch refused to tell him any more of his sister, not even that her name was Rapunzel. She went on. Meanwhile, the witch, for purposes of her own, explained how the baker might lift the spell. And so the baker, reluctantly, set off to meet the enchantress's demands. As for Cinderella, Cinderella had planted a branch at the grave of her mother, and she visited there so often and wept so much that her tears watered it until it had become a handsome tree. And so the baker continued his search for the cape as red as blood. As for Rapunzel, the witch was careful not to lose this beauty to the outside world, and so shut her within a doorless tower that lay deep within the forest, and when the old enchantress paid a visit, she called forth. And so the baker, with newfound determination, went after the red cape. As for the little girl, she was surprised to find her grandmother's cottage door standing open. And scarcely had the wolf said this, than with a single bound he was devouring the little girl. Well, it was a full day of eating for both, and with his appetite appeased, the wolf took to bed for a nice long nap. And so the baker, with the second article in hand, feeling braver and more satisfied than he had ever felt, ran back through the woods. As for the lad Jack, little did they know those beans would grow into an enormous stalk that would stretch into the heavens. Two midnights gone, and the exhausted baker and his wife buried the dead Milky White. Unfortunately for Rapunzel, the witch discovered her affections for the prince before he could before he could spurt her away. After having cast out Rapunzel to a remote desert, the witch returned to take the prince by surprise. And as he leapt from the tower, the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes and blinded him. As for Cinderella, she returned for her final visit to the festival. And so the mysterious man died, having helped end the curse on his house. For the baker, there would be no reunion with his father, and he and his wife, bewildered, returned home. The witch, who had been punished with age and ugliness that night when her beans had been stolen and the lightning flashed, was now returned to her former state of youth and beauty. And Milky White, after a night of severe indigestion, was reunited with the now wealthy Jack. As for the prince, he began his search for the foot to fit the golden slipper. When he came to Cinderella's house, Cinderella's stepmother took the slipper into Florinda's room. The girl obeyed, swallowing the pain, and joined the prince on his horse, riding off to become his bride. The prince returned the false bride, and asked the other sister to put on the slipper. The girl obeyed and swallowed her pain, but she was helped on the back of the horse by the prince. He noticed the blood trickling from the shoe, to which the woman replied. And when Cinderella presented herself and tried on the blood-soaked slipper, it fit like a glove. And much to the dismay of the stepmother and her daughters, he took Cinderella on his horse and rode off. And finally, for Rapunzel, she bore twins and lived impoverished in the desert, until one day her prince, wandering aimlessly, heard a voice so familiar that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel, overjoyed at seeing him, fell into his arms, weeping. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and their touch restored his vision. As is often the way in these tales, in exchange for her youth and beauty, the witch lost her powers over others. When the wedding with the prince was celebrated, Lucinda and Florinda attended, wishing to win favor with Cinderella and share her good fortune. But as the sisters stood by the blessed couple, pigeons swooped down upon them and poked out their eyes and punished them with blindness. And it came to pass, all that seemed wrong was now right. The kingdoms were filled with joy, and those who deserved it, and those who deserved it too, were certain to live a long and happy life, ever after. Journey over, all is mended, and it's not just for today, but tomorrow and extended, ever after. Well, that's the end of Act 1. Maybe I'll do Act 2 next. I hope you all are nice and relaxed. Good night, friends.